our next presenter, right? And she is talking about a way to present your story. So, pivoting to the publishing process, how to write a book. So, I am bringing my dear friend and another one of our partners. So, to help me bring you on. So, this is part of the trifecta. So, there is so many of us that are on the Juneteenth team that are ready to rock it out come June of this year. And Nadeen was a part of that team this past year, and we connected. Let me tell you, God is just awesome. See, God was
Yes.
just bringing connections and making things happen. When I say put it out into the atmosphere and it will be made plain, I did that. I was like, oh my gosh, I got this great platform. I have all of these things happening, and I need somebody to assist me with content. And somebody put me in contact with Nadeen, and she was like, I have all this content and I don't have a platform. I was like, look at God. So we connected, we made it happen, and we have been running ever since. So, Nadeen, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Athenia, thank you so much for being open this year to having me join you. Hi, Jamie. Um,
So
I
we're gonna give you the platform, ladies. So we can back.
okay.
By
Bye.
the way.
So just so just so everyone knows, I am all about the written word in different ways and forms. Today I'm going to talk about the publishing process. Um, we as a culture, we are very into storytelling. And one of the things I often hear people like, oh, I have a story I want to write a book, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always like, okay. So some of the things that you want to evaluate when you are thinking about writing a book and thinking about getting into the world of publishing. And we all know technology has changed by leaps and bounds over the last, I would say, 20 something years. Because when I went to college, I won't say when, but when I went to college, I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't have an email address. And by the time I got out of college, I had a cell phone, email address. I think, oh gosh, Black Planet might have been going on. I don't know. I was slow to get into all of the technology, but that has really changed how publishing is done. A lot of people self-publish. So there's two tracks once you have a product. You can either decide to self-publish or you can move to traditional publishing. Neither one is right. Neither one is wrong. It depends on what you want for yourself. Um, Let me backtrack. A little background about myself. I went to Clark Atlanta University. I was an English education major and a mass communications minor. I have always been about storytelling. I think storytelling is life. I'm a lawyer. When I worked in court, it was about giving what is the story. When we tell someone something, we always want to know what the background is. That is the story. What is your story? What inspired you to do this? Why did you do it? How? All of those things roll into what a story is. And story is important because what story does, the same way that music does for some people, how it can soften your heart and teach you things without directly saying something to you. That's what story affects us in different ways. When we hear children tell us a story about how someone treated them, it pulls at your heartstrings, and that is why I think story is so important. And I've found documentation about people who've researched how important story is. We know that in African cultures, there's usually someone called the griot that usually keeps the history of the tribe or keeps the history of the culture. And in many cultures, there's someone who has a verbal or oratorical association with the background of those people, and they have all of that history. When it moves into writing, it does change because writing kind of cements what you're saying. And as I'm talking, sometimes we'll be like, when you're writing, people's expectation is a little different. They want it to be seamless. And I said, again. So when you're writing, two things you have to think about are when you're doing a fictional book or when you're doing a nonfiction book. They're two different categories. So we're going to start with nonfiction because many people I meet, some of them have had very challenging situations, i.e., cancer. People have been incarcerated, they've had children, sickness, loss of a parent, things of that nature. I was a literary agent. I still work with writers and I agent very few projects now, but I still work with writers. And as a literary agent, what happens is people will solicit me to sell their book to a bigger publishing house. When you do that, that creates a relationship between the writer, the literary agent, and the publishing house. Publishing houses, you heard of them, Random House, Scholastic. There's children children's sections, there's adult sections, there's memoirs, there's how-to books, there's spiritual, there's help. There are many different categories. When you approach a literary agent, there's some things that you want to think about when you're looking into the nonfiction space. Let me see. Oh, I think I need to share my screen. Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. So let me just tell you these things first. When you're going to write a nonfiction book, you want to evaluate a few things about the story that you're telling. And most of the times, you have to present what is called a proposal when it's a nonfiction book. Proposal outlines what you're discussing, the different things that you are going to include in your book, the why should someone read your book, your market, who your audience is, who your target market is. You give a writing sample in what's called a book proposal. I'm sorry, I have a lot of copious notes for everyone here, so I'm going to share them as well as I get my share screen function. So when you decide to discuss a nonfiction topic, there's marketing and publishing rationale. What is the reason that you're doing this book? So, like I said, a lot of people will come and say, "Oh, I want to write a book about me having cancer." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." But we have to research and see how many other people have written a book about having cancer. If you're going the traditional publishing route, meaning you want to get someone at a big publishing house to buy your book, possibly give you an advance, pay for everything that is associated with getting that book from your written pages into print format. So they're assessing as well, what is the cost benefit of us doing this book? So, marketing and publishing rationale. You want to outline for the editors and the publishing house who your audience is. So, if I'm writing a nonfiction book about parenting, there are lots of parents. Is this for African American parents? Is this for minority parents? Is this for parents of children that are here from another culture? You want to really drill down, have your primary, secondary, and tertiary audience. Who are these people and what will they get from this book? You want to really tell the publisher what they are going to learn from reading this book and who your audience is and what they will learn. Particularly when we African Americans, Black people, the whole diaspora, when we do books, we really need to do an excellent job of outlining this because many people don't know our stories, they don't know our history. Of course, this past summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the racial injustice that's happened, there's been an uptick in people being interested. But that still doesn't absolve us of the duty to really outline our stories. Publishing has a very low percentage of people of color that work in it and that are successful at moving the needle. You want to provide a book description. You want to give in the book proposal, you want to provide a description of what this book will be about and what are the different chapters that are going to be associated with this book. You kind of want to really outline this thing. So once again, this is all in the proposal. What exactly is going to become of this reading of this book? You also want to do the key features and selling points. A key feature would be we're going to discuss how to live off of a certain budget. So one of the things that someone would get from a book like that is you would learn how to budget. You would learn how to, whether it be to thrift store shop or whether it be to shop at discounts, you would really you want to throw some key points out there to the individuals who are reading it so they can understand what is the key point of this book. Because when you provide a book proposal, it's going to go to your literary agent. Hopefully you get one. It's going to go to different editors at different publishing houses. That editor then usually has to send it to someone that's there above them, and sometimes it has to go to someone above them as well. So everyone is going to look at this proposal, and you want to be able to win them over. There are a lot of good stories out here, and there's a lot of good information. You want to make yourself stand out. One of the most important things, because of how technology has changed, is author platform. We have so much noise in society nowadays that it is very important that you as an author stand out. Why is someone reading your nonfiction book? Whether it be about you having cancer or it be you about being a teacher, what have you done that makes you qualified that I get to give you my time to read this book? You really need to present yourself. And this is where you do your bragging. I've been a teacher for 20 something years. I've been a principal. I've worked with over 30,000 kids. I raised my graduation rates from 70% to 90%. These are all the things you want to put in your platform. Who can you reach? Who are the people that you can reach with this book? Meaning, I'm affiliated with Jack and Jill of America. I'm affiliated with Juneteenth, or what are your affiliations, associations? Who are people that have higher profiles than you, or just as equal, who are willing to stand up for you and say, "Oh, my friend wrote this book." They're going to promote it for you. All of these things are important because with all of this noise out here in society, if you go on Amazon and look for a book, you'll get so many titles, but you have to rise above in order for people to even know that you have a product. Um, One of the sections that many people don't know about is called competitive titles. When you send in a book proposal for a nonfiction book, again, a book proposal for a nonfiction book, one of the things you want to do is you want to provide titles that are similar or different, but are in the same category as you, and you do compare and contrast. I worked on a book by Mary Ann Howland called Warrior Rising. That book was about her, it's a parenting book about her journey from raising her 13-year-old child to 18 and how she got him 5 mentors. It's an amazing book. Later on, we will connect through Juneteenth and I'll give you guys a whole breakdown of that book and that whole entire process. But with that book, what we had to do when it came to competitive titles, we had to give them information about what other books have sold that are dealing with parenting, parenting of Black boys, parenting of children of color. Another one of the themes in that book was rituals, because she did a rites of passage for her son called a Black mitzvah. We had to provide other books that discussed rites of passage and how they did. And you have to distinguish yourself from those other books, how you guys are alike and how you're different. What else are you going to provide by writing this book? If you cannot provide anything different with writing that book, the question will then come up, why am I writing this book? And that is something that you have to really answer for yourself. Are you writing this book because you believe that this information should be out there? Are you writing this book because you're trying to help people? Are you writing this book because you think you want to get rich? Those are questions when you come to me and you want me to help you with your book, I ask you, why are you writing this book? Because if you're writing the book to become rich, that's very difficult for me to help you with, because the process for writing a book can sometimes take upwards of a year. So if you're writing this book in hopes of becoming rich very quickly, that probably will not happen. And additionally, will you have the motivation if your passion isn't there for this book? We have the motivation to see this through, because your first draft is never your last draft, and there's a lot of rewrites that go into writing the book. So these are things that you assess as you are examining, why am I writing this book? Also want to make sure when you're doing your proposal, and the proposal takes a few drafts as well, and the proposal may change because as you're outlining these elements of the book, you may wonder, Oh wow, I should change this or I should switch this. That is something that I experience often when we really sit down and we are drilling down on what this book is about. Because you want to make sure that it's very clear to the reader, what is this book going to be about? Um, Another thing that you want to discuss when you are doing nonfiction books and nonfiction books that have a proposal. And let me say this to everyone, almost every nonfiction book needs a proposal. A children's nonfiction book needs a proposal, a biography needs a proposal, and memoir needs a proposal. All of these books need a proposal because you are able to sell this book idea oftentimes without the book being written. Yes, so you get to sell this idea based on this proposal, and publishing houses tend to pay you to have a book based on a proposal, and they will give you a later due date. So you really have to spend time with really flushing out all of the elements of this book proposal. Um, Excuse me for 1 second. Let me see. Again. Okay. Oh, sorry. These are some things for work. So one of the areas that you can also one of the areas that you can also discuss is when you're doing a memoir. A memoir is different from an autobiography in that a memoir will discuss a certain period of time in your life. You don't have to go from birth to death, whereas a biography will cover your life. You were born, how you died, or where you are. It will go over a longer span of time versus a memoir will discuss a very specific event in your life, something that changed you. When you when you are discussing that, there's some things that you need to be aware of. I'm just making sure everyone can still see me. Can everyone still see me? Okay. Um, when you are discussing your memoir, there's some things you need to think about. These elements come from a presentation that Regina Brooks of Serendipity Literary Agency. She does a presentation on memoirs that's amazing. She's really good at really helping you guys develop those elements. So if you ever can catch her giving a presentation on memoirs, it's really good. She also wrote a book. You should really write a. I think it's called "You Should Really Write a Book." But look her up, Regina Brooks. She's who I learned a lot of this information from. So she has this thing called Smile. When you're doing a memoir, it should be shocking, memorable, inspiring, loving, or entertaining. What are the elements of your story that things that have to deal with your life that are going to make someone want to read about your life and your journey? Um, you want to have a hook for your book. What is going to grab the reader? You want to have excellent writing. When you're dealing with excellent writing, it's not to say that you can't write, but oftentimes, even when I write, I have to have someone proof my writing. I proof other people's writing, and what we're saying and what we're writing sometimes don't correlate. So sometimes we have to have someone look at our writing and say, oh, why don't you try this word? And don't let your pride and your ego get in the way of making your writing excellent by doing rewrites and asking for assistance. We talked about platform. Apologies. We talked about platform and we talked about motivation to write your book. And we also discussed difference between a memoir and autobiography. These are all things that when it comes to memoir writing that you must think about. So hopefully everyone got this. Smile. Shocking, memorable, inspiring, loving, and entertaining. Okay. When we write our books and they are nonfiction, after you do the proposal and you and your agent get it to an editor, and the editor decides to make a purchase, then you are drawn into the different stages of the process. That is then there's contract execution. Usually you're paid a third upon contract execution. You'll be paid a third sometimes upon the turning in of the proposed book. And then you're paid again when the book is done being published, meaning it's ready to go out into the world. So you don't get your advance all at once when you're doing a book. It is broken. Um, Someone just text, sorry. Your book, it's broken into 3 different sections. Now, that's for a nonfiction book that is going through the traditional publishing process. For those of you who choose to self-publish, I do not, well, like I said, there's no right and there's no wrong. But I will encourage you, when you are self-publishing, you want to take the time to invest in certain things when you're self-publishing. Someone who's going to help you edit, someone who's going to help you with a cover, someone who's going to help you typeset your book, someone who's going to, you want editorial proofreading, and then you want content. Editorial meaning content. You want someone who's going to check for commas, periods, grammatical errors. All of those things should be done as well. You should also hire somebody for marketing. You may need to hire someone for PR. Let me say this also. Even when you traditionally publish, you should still set aside some of the money that you have, that you receive, if you receive in advance, or if you decide to save your own money. Both of those things, you should still set aside money to deal with your marketing. That would be a whole other discussion about marketing in book publishing. But with that being said, when you decide to self-publish, everything that the publisher would do becomes your responsibility. You are your own publisher. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to act like a business, and you must act as a professional, and the product that you put out is a representation of yourself. So when you self-publish, you're taking on the onus that, you know what, I'm going to do this. And you should do that if that's what you so choose to do, and you have the resources and you are ready to put out a professional product. When you do self-publish, all of the marketing is up to you, meaning you should call your friends and ask them to push your book. You should do everything that a publisher would do to get your book out there into the world. And if you think this book is something that should be out there, then by all means, go ahead and self-publish. When you go on Amazon, what you'll notice is there's so many self-published books. So once again, you are going to be trying to raise awareness about your particular product. One of the books that was self-published that went on to be published was The Shack. That was a movie. It also turned into a movie. That is another segment of publishing that we have to get into, because a lot of books, as you know, they become movies. There's the book, and then they go into screenwriting, and then it becomes something that turns into a movie. Some books that have become movies are Crazy Rich Asians. That was once a book. The Queen's Gambit, which is now on Netflix, that was a book. And just for context, so people can understand what the process of all of this is when it comes to writing, that particular book was published in 1983, I believe. To date, it has been viewed by 62 million people. Alan Scott, who is the person, the producer, when he spoke about this recently, he said it took about 30 years with 9 rewrites. And every studio he showed it to said that no one would be interested in chess. So the whole thing is, if you really feel deep down in your spirit that there's a book, a movie, or something that you need to do, then keep going. But know that rejection is definitely part of the process, because everyone loves to see, no, let me phrase that. Everyone has to believe in their own project. And everyone loves a good story, but everyone's sensibilities are not the same. So things that will resonate with me may not resonate with someone else. So you have to find that person where stories resonate with. Some of you love rom-com, romance comedy. Other people don't like romance comedy. So you have to find editors and people who are in the different industries when it comes to written projects that are into that part. And that takes some research as well. Um, if I'm correct, I believe J.K. Tolan, the Harry Potter series, she was rejected over 30 something times with her book series. And that, of course, also went on to become movies. Um, so rejection is part of it. And like I said before, do not let your ego and pride get in the way of you creating something wonderful. Take your time. And the other part of this that I will discuss is the fiscal part. I live in New York City, as do many people, and it's expensive here. So I encourage you, don't feel bad when you have to do what you need to do to survive and you have that creative spirit inside of you. You have to carve out that time to really dive in, and whether it's 5 a.m. writing sessions for 30 minutes a day or it's an hour every day, whatever it is that you can do to get that writing out of your spirit, that's what you have to do. And you have to be disciplined about it because it will nag at you. It will really nag at you when there's something that, like, oh, you should write this, you need to write this, or you have an amazing story to tell, or, one of those things. So, I encourage people to do what's best for you. Don't let other people tell you about your creative process when it comes to your financial well being and your mental health, living in places and spaces and taking care of kids and families and all of those things. All of those things considered, you have to do what's best for you because everything, we live in a capitalist society, is about the money. Um, I'm trying to think what other points that I want to briefly go over with everyone. Um, in the fiction space, so we're moving on from nonfiction to fiction. In the fictional space, before I will take on a writer, I usually tell them they should join a writers group. Because when you're writing, you need to have a cross section of people that are going to enjoy your book. You and your 10 friends who you grew up with enjoying your book does not mean that book is saleable. Once again, this is if you're going through the traditional publishing process. So, in order for a publisher to pick up your book, they're going to want to know, well, who's going to buy this book? Why would we as a publishing house invest all this money in getting your book to print if there's no audience for it? So, when you join a writer's group, there are other writers and they'll read your book for you and they'll give you feedback. And when you get that feedback, you have to take it with a grain of salt because, if there's 30 people in this writing group and 20 something of them are like, oh, I like the book, but these are the changes you need to make, and 8 of them don't like it, then you know that you're hitting on probably a good side with this book. Although you may need some editorial information and make some editorial changes. In the fiction space as well, you also want to make sure, and this is one of my favorite things that I learned from somebody who was working with me at Serendipity Literary Agency. When you're doing fictional writing, you want to make sure that you keep your readers in a dream sequence. You want to make sure that you do not bring them out of that dream sequence. So when you give your book to your writing group, what they will do is, oh, well, this kind of confused me. They'll tell you the things that they thought, and they'll give you very, plain, honest information and feedback. And you should take it and you should, sit with it for a minute. Don't rush and make the changes, but sitting with the comments and say, okay, I see what they're talking about. And then you may have to go back in again. When you query, that's what it's called when you query uh, an agent. When you query an agent, what will happen is usually send about 3 chapters. Some people send everything. And usually an agent will ask for more. You usually sell a completed fictional book to a publishing house. So nonfiction, you do a proposal. With fiction, it's usually the whole entire book. Um, Marketing for fictional books is a little different, of course, because these are made up people, characters, places, and spaces. Lovecraft Country was also a book that recent HBO show that came on with Journey Smollett, I believe that it was her name. She was in Lovecraft Country. That was also a book. I can go on and on about things that were books that were turned into movies. So that's why I always say I'm a person that deals with the written word, because movies and books, the lines are becoming very blurred now, because those stories that you bring to life in a book brought to the screen are amazing. One of my favorites, of course, also was The Color Purple by Alice Walker. That was a book that Steven Spielberg made into a movie, and over 30 years later, I believe, if I'm correct, you know, that movie still is amazing. Diary of a Wimpy Kid was also fictional books that were made into movies. So again, all of those things considered. But in winding down, I just want to offer you, if invest in yourself when it comes to writing. Take classes, look for peer writing groups, people that will help you grow your writing. Dialogue is so important when you're doing writing. Show people, don't tell them. Don't tell someone that someone acted nasty. Put them in a situation, what if it's nonfiction, put them in a situation where you're telling about, not telling, you're showing how they reacted in a situation. And in fiction, same thing. You made up a story, make up a situation where you can see how that person is reacting. And a lot of times that's done through dialogue. And that allows a reader to be drawn in a little bit further, instead of you just saying, oh, she was so nasty. No, you show her interacting with someone in that particular written piece, and it shows how nasty that person is. It brings it to life, makes it more vivid, and it, makes it larger for the reader to take it in. Um, I will provide my email address. If you have any questions, or I can try and point you in the right direction to someone else that can assist you with certain things when it comes to the writing process, I will surely do that. My email address is Nadeen.Gayle, Nadeen.Gayle @gmail.com. I will be in not anytime soon, but futuristically, I will be probably working with more writers than I am right now. But right now, I'm not taking on a lot of writers. I can definitely help you and point you in the right direction to get you on a path. And usually those things get you to where you want to go, or you realize this actually isn't what the book I want to do. I actually want to write about this. So, but I'm open and I'm here. And I definitely think that it's a hard world to get into, and a lot of people don't share the information. So I'm very happy that I was able to share some of this information. There's so much more, and with Athenia and Juneteenth, we will definitely give you guys more information on the writing process, and I'll do a full thing on fiction, nonfiction, and marketing. So with that being said, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful Kwanzaa and a happy 2021 to everyone.